Yep.
And I first met him with his mother. It's a bad family anyway, you know, but it was just so good listening to him and just seeing what he's about. And I did a CD with him. Remember that record I did with you?
Yes, very much.
And he came up to me and said, it was my best-selling one. I said, that's good. But it was a joy doing that because he is he's a brilliant, 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 brilliant poet, you know. Someone said to me, is it, you know, these people who write this stuff, are they poets? And I said, what do you think they're doing? Yeah, it is poetry. And it's important poetry. And we came out of that tradition of the people who came out of the Harlem Renaissance, and there was a group right behind that in the 1930s and 40s, and with Gwen Brooks and Margaret Walker and all of those, and then we came after them. And then, of course, there's got to be someone coming behind us, and someone said to me, have you heard those guys and what they're doing? I said, yeah, ain't they bad, right? And that is so true. We understood that you took what we were saying to another point, you know,
yes.
And it was a great thing listening to you, watching you, seeing how you move on this earth, and we just love you. And
I love you too.
Thank you, my dear.
I love you too. And the song she's referring to is a song called Everything Man off my album Eardrum. And the reason why I want to have Sister Sonia Sanchez on that record is to connect the dots. What I do musically and poetically, and how I even feed my family, not just me, but a lot of artists, is based and rooted in the tradition of the Black arts movement and the people who came before. And so my first question is, as someone who was a figurehead, a very active participant in what we now call the Black arts movement, when it was happening, did you understand how legendary it was? And did you understand how y'all were shifting the culture for artists like me in the hip hop generation? Or was it something that you guys were just oblivious
to? You can't be oblivious when it comes to something creative in America. You know, not if you're a person of color, because you will be ignored along the way. However, to really get to the answer there, we knew when we heard those brothers coming out of the Bronx. You know, some people called me and said, did you hear what you just heard? I said, I sure did hear what I just heard. And you know what? They are that continuation of who we are. And it was something seeing you and all the other brothers and sisters on the stages of America actually being who you were, but we knew instinctively that you were a continuation of who we were. For instance, when we used to go to California or the Midwest or Texas someplace reading our poetry, you know, we would read our poetry and someone would say, could you read that again because you went too fast? And I remember Barack looked at me and said, what? You know, and I said, yeah, so we go and read the poem much slower. However, what happened then at some point, you know, a year later, we're coming through the same turf, whatever. And, you know, I forgot to read it slowly, right? And I did what I did. And those students said, because they train your ears, my ears also to that philosophy of what they were saying, right? That fastness, what they were saying. And I didn't have to then go and redo it, you know, and reinterpret it. And that is the joy that we attune America's ears to a pace that they probably might have heard some things like that with the beats, okay? You know, and also with the brothers, you know, who did a lot of the jazz that was modern at that particular point. You know, when you sat and listened to Max, or when you sat and listened to all the other people playing sometimes, you know, basically, an aside, someone said to me, Sister Sanchez, do you think you'll ever get to outer space? I said, I write poetry, I've been in outer space. No! They look kind of funny, but it's true. But I also had heard Ella and Sarah. You know, and Ella Fitzgerald, with all that she did, would do fantastic kinds of things with her voice, right? And with that scatting. But she was a careful, what I call a careful jazz singer. She kept you right on earth. You never left earth. You should listen again. She kept you really planted here, your feet planted. But then you listen to Sarah about 3 o'clock in the morning when you were reading or grading papers. And Sarah said, mm-hmm. And then she took you to outer space. And the only thing you worried about is that could you get back, to Earth in time. And that was the only difference between the two of them. That Sarah thought, listen to Sarah at 3 o'clock in the morning and close your eyes and you realize that we've taken that trip to outer space. What they're doing now is like, is that so? Because we had been there before. And one of the things that y'all did, on some levels, is that you also took people out of their comfort places, whatever. You were saying at some point, you weren't angry at your parents, and that was one of the differences that we were saying out loud to you. Don't curse your parents out.
Can you get mine stick?
I never cursed my parents out, but I cursed a lot of other people out, for what they had done. I'm getting shorter and shorter. What they had done. And you never curse your parents, but that underneath it all was that look that you gave your parents. Like at some point, I asked my dad, "But what did you do?" Because he was always saying, "Don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to get in trouble. Don't do that. You're going to get fired." Now, that part was right. I did get fired. Most of you know that I got banned out of New York City, period. I could not teach.